The observation hall on Terminus Prime was built entirely of glass. Princess Velara sat in her hoverchair near the back corner, hidden partly behind a silver pillar. From here, she could see everything without being seen. At least, that was what she told herself. Through the transparent walls, hundreds of alien dignitaries moved like colorful fish in an aquarium. They were here for the grand matching ceremony, where royal families from across the galaxy arranged marriages to seal treaties and create alliances. Velara had watched for 3 days now as suitors reviewed holographic profiles of potential matches. Each time her image appeared in the rotating display, the reaction was the same. A Krell diplomat had made a sound like choking when her profile floated past. A Thorian prince had simply waved his hand to skip her immediately. The worst had been the Vex ambassador who had actually laughed, before moving on to the next option. Velara's bioluminescent markings, which should have glowed bright blue across her skin, remained dim. In Silvathi culture, this was the visible sign of her defect. The paralysis of her lower body was just the confirmation of what her pale markings already announced. She was broken. Her father, Emperor Kothron, stood on the main floor below, his own markings blazing bright with barely controlled anger. He had been desperate to find her a match. Without a marriage alliance, the Silvathi Empire faced economic sanctions from the Council. 3 of his daughters had already been matched successfully. Velara was the last, the unwanted one. The problem he could not solve. She adjusted her hoverchair slightly, making sure the pillar blocked her from most angles. The chair itself was another mark of shame. Silvathi were warriors, hunters, beings who valued physical perfection above nearly everything else. A princess who could not walk, who could not fight, who could barely make her ancestral markings glow, was worse than useless. She was an embarrassment. Velara pulled out her data tablet, trying to distract herself with mathematical equations. She had been working on a problem in quantum fold navigation for months. If she could prove her theory, it would cut travel time between sectors by nearly 40%. But who cared about mathematics when you are supposed to be a warrior queen? The human delegation has arrived, announced High Chancellor Rixith over the hall speakers. His voice echoed strangely through the glass chamber. Velara looked up with mild interest. Humans were relatively new to the Galactic Council, barely 100 years as members. Most species viewed them as weak curiosities, technologically behind and physically inferior to nearly everyone else. They lived such short lives, barely a century, and they were so soft. No armor plating, no natural weapons, no enhanced senses. Just soft skin and stubborn attitudes. The human delegation entered through the main doors. There were only 5 of them, compared to the dozens that made up other species groups. Velara watched as they were greeted formally by the Chancellor. The leader seemed to be a male, she thought, though human gender markers were not always obvious to her. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and a tired expression. He wore simple clothes compared to the elaborate robes and armor of other delegates. The human leader, Ambassador J, according to the name that appeared on her tablet's translation feed, was immediately pulled into conversation by a cluster of Thorian merchants. He looked overwhelmed. His assistant, a human female named Yuna, whispered something to him while checking her own tablet frantically. The ceremony continued. More profiles rotated through the holographic displays. More suitors selected their preferences. Velara's profile appeared twice more in the rotation. Twice more, it was passed over without hesitation. She felt her markings grow even dimmer, responding to her emotional state. She hated that she could not control them, that her feelings were literally written on her skin for everyone to see. She was about to leave, to return to her quarters and end this humiliation for the day, when she noticed something strange. The human ambassador had broken away from the Thorian merchants and was walking across the observation floor. He was not heading toward the holographic displays where the matching was happening. He was heading toward her corner of the hall. Valera's first instinct was to move away, to hide more completely behind a pillar. But she was frozen, watching him approach. He could not possibly be coming to speak with her. No one came to speak with her at these events. She was the princess you pretended not to see, but he kept walking until he was standing directly in front of her hover chair. Up close, she could see that his eyes were brown, a color that did not exist naturally among her people. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes, but his expression was open and curious. "Princess Velara?" he said in heavily accented Silvathi. His grammar was terrible, accidentally using the informal form reserved for children and close friends. Despite herself, Velara felt the corners of her mouth twitch. No one had made that particular grammatical error in her presence since she was a child. It was so wrong it was almost funny. "Yes," she replied in the common galactic language, saving him from further embarrassment. "I am she. I am Ambassador J from Earth," he said, switching to the common language with obvious relief. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Velara looked around nervously. Across the hall, she could see her father's delegation watching with expressions of shock. High Chancellor Rixith had paused in his conversations to observe. Yuna, the human assistant, had her face in her hands as if she could not believe what was happening. "Why?" Velara asked simply. Jay looked confused by the question. "Because you are sitting here alone, and that seemed sad. Also, I read your published paper on quantum mathematics last month. I did not understand most of it, but what I did understand was brilliant." Velara stared at him. She had published exactly one paper, under a pseudonym, in an obscure scientific journal. The chances of this human having read it were microscopically small. The chances of him connecting it to her were even smaller. The chances of him bringing it up in conversation, as if it mattered, as if it were something to be proud of, were essentially impossible. "You read my paper?" she said carefully, waiting for the joke, for the mockery. "Yes, the section about folded space mathematics was beyond me. But your introduction was clear enough that even I could follow the basic premise. Do you really think you can reduce travel time by 40%? He was serious. He was actually standing here at a marriage matching ceremony, asking her about mathematical theory. Velara felt something strange happening to her markings. They flickered, then glowed slightly brighter for just a moment before dimming again. "Possibly," she said slowly, "if the calculations prove correct, and if the engineering can match the theory." Jay smiled. It was not a mocking smile or a pitying smile. It was just a smile, genuine and warm. That would change everything. Trade, exploration, emergency response, everything. You would revolutionize galactic travel. "I am a Silvathi princess," Velara said bitterly. "I am supposed to revolutionize military tactics, not mathematics. Why?" Jay asked, and he sounded genuinely confused. "Why would you do something you are not interested in when you could do something you are brilliant at?" It was such a human question. Such a strange, naive, impossible question. And Velara, despite herself, despite years of trained caution and learned shame, began to answer it. Around them, the matching ceremony continued. But in a quiet corner of the observation hall, a human and a princess talked about mathematics. And something impossible began to take root. They talked for 20 minutes before Yuna finally approached and whispered urgently in Jay's ear. He nodded reluctantly and turned back to Velara. "I apologize, but I am needed at a meeting about mining rights. It is apparently very urgent and very boring." He hesitated, then added, "May I speak with you again tomorrow?" Velara felt her markings flicker with confusion and something that might have been hope. She crushed the hope immediately. Why would you want to do that? Because I enjoyed this conversation more than any I have had in the past 3 days, Jay said simply. Then he bowed, somewhat awkwardly in the human style, and left with Yuna. Violera sat alone again, her mind spinning. She watched as Jay rejoined his delegation and was pulled into a group of important-looking aliens. She told herself not to think about it. It had been one conversation. It meant nothing. He was just being polite, which humans were known for. Their strange social customs often included pretending to care about things they did not actually care about, but he had read her paper. He had known about her research. That was not just politeness. She returned to her quarters eventually, her hover chair moving silently through the curved corridors of Terminus Prime. Her attendants helped her prepare for rest, their hands careful and their eyes averted as always. They spoke to her with the kind of gentle tones people used with the dying. She dismissed them quickly and pulled up her research on her private terminal. She could not focus. Her mind kept returning to the conversation, to the strange human who had asked her why she did not just do what she was good at, as if that were a reasonable question. The next morning, she did not go to the observation hall. She told herself she was not avoiding anything. She simply had work to do. Her calculations were at a critical point. But after lunch, there was a message waiting for her. It was from Ambassador Jay. He asked if she would join him for what he called tea, a human custom apparently involving sitting and drinking hot liquids and talking. He suggested they meet in one of the station's quieter gardens. Velara stared at the message for a long time. Then she wrote a brief acceptance and immediately regretted it. Then she told herself she was being foolish. Then she went to meet him anyway. The garden was in the habitation ring of the station, where artificial gravity and atmosphere created a pleasant environment for species that enjoyed such things. Jay was already there, sitting on a bench designed for multiple body types. He stood when he saw her approach. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I was not sure you would." "I was not sure I would either," Velara admitted. They sat, or rather, Jay sat, and Velara's hoverchair positioned itself at a comfortable height. A server brought tea, which turned out to be a pleasant warm drink that tasted like flowers. They talked about small things at first. The station's design, the upcoming council votes, the terrible food at the formal dinners. Then Jay asked her about her research again, and Velara found herself explaining her theories in detail. He listened carefully, asking questions when he was confused. Some of his questions were basic, but some were surprisingly insightful. He had clearly been reading more about quantum mathematics since their last conversation. "You studied this just to talk to me?" Velara asked, surprised that Jay looked embarrassed. "I wanted to understand what you were working on. I am not very good at advanced mathematics, but I can learn the basics." "Why?" It was the question she kept asking, the one she could not stop asking. Jay was quiet for a moment, looking at the artificial trees swaying in the artificial breeze. "I had a sister named Hannah," he said finally. I have a sister named Hannah. She was born with cerebral palsy." "Do you know what that is?" Velara shook her head. "It is a condition that affects muscle control and movement. When she was born, doctors told my parents she would never walk, never speak clearly, never live independently. They were wrong about all of those things. Hannah is now one of Earth's leading engineers in spacecraft design. She still has cerebral palsy. She still moves differently than most people. But she is brilliant and successful and happy." He turned to look at Velara directly. "When I saw you hiding in that corner yesterday, watching everyone reject you, it made me angry. Not at you. At them. At a system that judges people by bodies instead of minds." Velara felt her markings beginning to glow, despite her efforts to control them. "That is a very human perspective. Is it wrong?" "No," she admitted quietly. But it is not how the galaxy works. Maybe it should be. They talked for another hour. Velara told him things she had never told anyone. How she spent most of her time in her quarters, studying subjects her family considered worthless. How she had taught herself 6 languages, because no one expected her to do anything else with her time. How she had secretly been designing adaptive technology for other disabled Silvathi children. Though there were supposedly none in the noble families, Che listened to all of it without judgment, without pity. He asked questions and shared his own stories. He told her about Earth, about its strange diversity, about how humans came in so many different forms and abilities, and all were considered equally human. "We have a saying," Jay said as the afternoon grew late. "Different, not less. It means that people with disabilities are not lesser than others. Just different. That would be considered a radical idea among my people," Velara said. "Is it a wrong idea?" "No, but that does not make it any easier to believe." When they parted, Jay asked if they could meet again. Velara agreed before she could stop herself. As she returned to her quarters, she noticed her markings were glowing brighter than they had in years. Her attendants noticed too, but said nothing. Over the next week, Jay and Velara met every day. Sometimes in the gardens, sometimes in quiet corners of the station's library. Once, daringly, in the observation hall itself, where everyone could see them. The gossip spread quickly through the diplomatic channels. The human ambassador was courting the broken princess. Some found it amusing. Some found it confusing. Some found it suspicious. What did Earth want? What were they planning? Yuna approached Velara one afternoon when Jay was delayed at a meeting. The human assistant was professional, but clearly concerned. "Princess Velara," Yuna said carefully, "I hope you will not take offense, but I must ask. Jay is genuinely interested in you. He is not playing some diplomatic game. I need you to know that, because if you hurt him, I will be very upset." Velara stared at her. "You think I would hurt him? Everyone expects him to hurt me. Do they?" Yuna asked. "Or do you expect you to hurt you? Because from where I stand, you are the one holding back. He has already decided he cares about you. The question is whether you will let yourself care about him." After Yuna left, Velara sat alone for a long time, thinking about that question. That evening, Jay brought her a gift. It was a data chip containing every scientific paper published by Silvathi researchers in the last 10 years. "I thought you might enjoy reading these," he said. Yuna helped me compile the list. Velara loaded the chip and discovered that every single paper was authored by someone identified as disabled or injured. Research that had been published, but never promoted, never celebrated, never acknowledged by Silvathi society. Decades of brilliant work by people like her, hidden in obscure journals. "You are not alone," Jay said quietly. "You never were." Velara's markings blazed bright blue, brighter than they had since she was a child. She looked at Jay, this strange human who had appeared in her life, and refused to see her the way everyone else did. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because someone should," Jay said. "Because you deserve it. Because I want to." And for the first time in her life, Princess Velara began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was worth wanting. The formal request came 3 days later. Ambassador Jay of Earth officially petitioned the Silvathi court for permission to court Princess Velara according to traditional protocols. The announcement was broadcast across the diplomatic channels, and the reaction was immediate. The High Chancellor himself came to Velara's quarters. Rixith was a Krell, a species that looked like walking crystals, and his expression was unreadable. "Princess, this is most unusual. A human suitor has never attempted Silvathi courtship protocols. Most species consider them impossible. Will my father accept the petition? Velara asked, though she already knew the answer. Emperor Cothran was desperate. A human alliance was better than no alliance at all, even if it meant accepting a match others would mock. He has already accepted, Rixith said. The human will face the 3 trials beginning tomorrow. I suggest you prepare yourself, Princess. These trials were designed for Silvathi warriors. Ambassador J is neither Silvathi nor a warrior. After the Chancellor left, Velara tried to contact J but could not reach him. The protocols forbade communication between suitor and potential match during the trial period. She was left alone with her worry, watching news feeds as various species placed bets on how quickly the human would fail. The first trial was called the Trial of Strength. Traditionally, it involved single combat or a test of physical endurance against impossible odds. The trial was held in the central arena of Terminus Prime, with hundreds of witnesses from dozens of species in attendance. J entered the arena looking small and tired. Across from him stood a combat simulator programmed to match and exceed a Silvathi warrior's abilities. No one expected him to win. The question was only how long he would last. But Jay did not approach the simulator. Instead, he turned to the assembled judges and spoke clearly. I request a reinterpretation of the trial. Strength is not only physical. I offer a demonstration of strength of will and mind instead of body. The arena fell silent. This had never been done before. The judges, all elderly Silvathi warriors, conferred among themselves. Emperor Cothran watched from the royal box, his markings flickering with uncertainty. Finally, the head judge announced, "The law allows for interpretation." "State your terms, human." "Give me a crisis to solve," Jay said. "Any diplomatic or logistical problem currently facing the council. Give me 72 hours to resolve it without rest. If I succeed, I pass the trial." More conferring. Then the head judge smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Very well. The Mox and Tiber systems are on the verge of war over mining rights in disputed territory. 7 mediators have failed. You had 72 hours to create a treaty both sides will accept. What happened next became legendary in diplomatic circles. Jay sealed himself in a conference room with representatives from both systems, boxes of human coffee, and access to council legal databases. Yuna and other human staff worked in shifts outside, passing in food and documents. Velara watched the live feeds from her quarters, unable to look away. She saw Jay's eyes grow red with exhaustion. She saw him pace and argue and draw diagrams in the air with holographic tools. She saw him refuse rest even when both sides agreed to take breaks. 40 hours in, he collapsed. Medical teams rushed in, but Jay waved them away after 10 minutes and returned to work. "Still have time," he muttered, drinking more of the terrible human coffee. At the 68th hour, a treaty emerged. Both sides signed. The war was prevented. Jay walked out of the conference room, bowed to the judges, and then fainted. Human medical staff carried him to the hospital wing. Velara wanted desperately to visit him, but could not. The protocols still forbade contact. She spent the night pacing in her hoverchair, checking medical reports every few minutes. He was fine, just exhausted. He would recover. The second trial began a week later, after Jay had rested. This was the trial of knowledge. The suitor had to demonstrate understanding of Silvathi culture by reciting the ancient epic poetry cycle, 40,000 words in the old tongue. Without error. It was considered the impossible trial. Even most Silvathi could not complete it. The words were archaic, the grammar complex, the pronunciation difficult. No outsider had ever succeeded. Jay stood before the judges and began to recite. His accent was terrible. His pronunciation made several elderly Silvathi wince. But the words were correct. Every single one of them got. It took 6 hours. Jay's voice grew hoarse, but he continued. Velara watched and felt something strange in her chest. She had never memorized the entire cycle herself, had never seen the point. But Jay had done it. For her. Afterward, when reporters asked how he had managed it, Jay simply said, "Princess Velara helped me study before the petition was filed. She is an excellent teacher." This was true. Velara had helped him with pronunciation during their conversations, never imagining he was memorizing everything. The realization made her markings glow so bright, her attendants commented on it. The third trial was the trial of sacrifice. The suitor had to give up something precious to show commitment. This could be anything from wealth to position to personal treasures. The value was judged not by others, but by how much it meant to the giver. Jay stood before the council and placed a small card on the ceremonial altar. It was his return transport authorization to Earth. "This is my ticket home," he said quietly. "It represents my right to return to my planet, to see my family, to walk on my homeworld. I sacrifice this to show I choose a life here with Princess Velara, if she will have me. I give up my certain future for an uncertain one, because some things are worth the risk." The arena was absolutely silent. Even the judges seemed moved. It was a devastating sacrifice. Humans lived such short lives, barely a century. To give up years with family, to commit to remaining in alien space permanently, was a sacrifice beyond measure. Emperor Cawthrain stood in his box, his markings blazing. The human has passed all 3 trials. He has demonstrated strength, knowledge, and sacrifice. He has earned the right to make his offer to Princess Velara. Velara was brought to the arena. Her hover chair moved slowly across the sand. She had not seen Jay since before the trials began. He looked thinner now, exhausted from the ordeals. But when he saw her, he smiled. The head judge spoke the traditional words. "Suitor, you have proven yourself worthy. Make your offer before these witnesses." But Jay did not speak immediately. Instead, he walked to Valara's hover chair and knelt beside it so their eyes were level. Around them, hundreds of aliens watched. Cameras recorded every moment for broadcast across the galaxy. "Velara," Jay said, and his voice was soft, but carried by the arena's acoustics. "I need to tell you something before I ask my question. I have spent the past weeks getting to know you. Not the princess, not the political match, but you. The person who loves mathematics and terrible jokes. The person who designed adaptive technology for children she has never met. The person who is brilliant and kind, and so much stronger than anyone gives you credit for." Her markings were glowing so bright, now they cast blue light on his face. "I do not want to court you because of duty," he continued. "I do not want to marry you despite your challenges. I want you in my life because you are the most amazing person I have ever met. Because when I am with you, I feel like I am exactly where I should be." He took her hand gently. "Be mine, not because of trees or trials or traditions, but because I choose you, and I will keep choosing you every day for as long as you let me. Will you choose me too?" The arena held its breath. Velara looked at this human who had passed impossible trials, who had given up his home, who had seen her and decided she was worth everything. She thought about spending her life hidden away, safe and alone. She thought about spending it with him, uncertain and together. "Yes," she whispered. Then, louder, her voice carrying across the arena, "Yes, I choose you." Jay's smile could have lit the entire station. He stood and helped adjust her hover chair so they could face the judges together. Hand in hand, chosen and choosing, they received the blessing of the court, but Velara leaned close and whispered, something only Jay could hear. "I have a condition." "Anything," he whispered back. "I want to change things." I want to help others like me. I want to publish my work and build my technology and make my people see that different is not broken. I need someone who will support that, even when it is hard. Jay squeezed her hand. I would not want you any other way. The engagement was announced across the galaxy. Reactions varied wildly. Some species sent congratulations. Others sent confusion. A few sent what could only be described as condolences to the Silvathi Empire for such a poor match. Earth itself erupted in celebration, though many human politicians privately worried about the implications. Velara and Jay were finally allowed to spend time together without protocol restrictions. They had 3 weeks until the formal bonding ceremony, and they used the time to plan their future. Velara showed Jay her designs for adaptive technology. Jay introduced her to human medical experts via video link, including a doctor named Minho, who specialized in neurological conditions. Your condition is degenerative? Dr. Minho asked during one consultation, his face serious on the screen. Velara nodded. Eventually, I will lose the use of my arms as well. Perhaps in 10 years. Perhaps in 20. My people consider it a slow death sentence. May I see your medical scans? She sent them. Dr. Minho studied the data for 3 days before calling back. I cannot cure you, he said honestly, but I believe we can slow the progression significantly. Human physical therapy techniques, combined with some of the adaptive technology you have already designed, might give you decades instead of years. And who knows what medical advances will come in that time. For the first time, Velara felt something like hope about her physical future. Not a cure, but time. Time to live, to work, to be with Jay. But not everyone was happy about the engagement. General Tharao of the Silvathi military had been a vocal opponent from the start. He considered the human match an insult to Silvathi honor. Worse, he viewed Velara's very existence as a stain on the royal bloodline. 5 days before the bonding ceremony, Tharao made his move. He called for a public challenge during a council session, a traditional right that could not be refused. With cameras broadcasting to every species, he stood and pointed at Velara. I speak for many when I say this bonding is a mistake, Tharao declared. The princess is not only physically defective, but genetically compromised. Her condition will worsen. In 10 or 20 years, she will be completely helpless. Does the human understand this? Does he know he is binding himself to a mate who will become a burden? The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Such direct insults were rarely spoken aloud, even among Silvathi. Emperor Kothran rose to his feet, his markings blazing with rage, but Velara held up her hand. Let him speak, she said quietly, her voice amplified through the chamber. I want to hear what he has to say. Tharao smiled cruelly. You have been sheltered, hidden away like the shame you are. But the truth is simple. You are dying slowly. Your body is failing. You will never bear healthy children. You will never lead warriors into battle. You will never be anything but a burden to whoever is fool enough to take you as a mate. He turned to Jay, who had been sitting in the Earth delegation section. Human, I ask you directly, did you know the full extent of her condition? That she will worsen? That she will need increasing care and support? That binding yourself to her means accepting a future of watching her decline? The entire council chamber held its breath. Cameras focused on Jay's face. This was his chance to withdraw honorably. No one would blame him. The full truth had been publicly revealed. He could walk away. Jay stood slowly. He walked down from the delegation seating, his footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. He crossed the floor to where Velara sat in her hover chair at the royal section. Security guards tensed, unsure if they should stop him, but Emperor Kothran waved them back. Jay stopped beside Velara's chair. He looked at Tharao, then at the assembled delegates, then at the cameras that were broadcasting this moment to billions of beings across the galaxy dot. Then he knelt beside Velara, just as he had in the arena after the trials. He took her hand gently, and in the profound silence of the council chamber, with everyone watching, he spoke. His voice was quiet, but the acoustics carried every word. I know exactly what I am choosing. Velara told me about her condition during our second conversation. She has never hidden the truth from me. Not about her body, not about her future, not about anything. He turned to look at Velara, and his expression was so full of tenderness that several beings in the audience made sounds of surprise. Silvathi did not display such open emotion. Most species did not. You think I do not understand what I am accepting? Jay continued, his voice growing stronger. Let me be clear. I know Velara's condition will progress. I know there will be difficult days ahead. I know that loving her means supporting her, caring for her, adapting with her. He squeezed her hand. But General Tharo, you do not understand what I am gaining. I am gaining a partner who sees the universe in ways no one else does, who solves problems others cannot imagine, who has survived in a culture that rejected her and remained kind despite it, who designs technology to help children she has never met because she knows they need it. Jay stood, still holding Velara's hand, and faced Tharo directly. You call her a burden. I call her a blessing. You see weakness. I see strength of a kind your warrior culture has never understood. She has faced more challenges in her life than you have faced in battle, and she has done it without weapons or armor or anyone to support her. The chamber was absolutely silent. Even Tharo seemed stunned. So yes, Jay said, his voice carrying across the chamber and across the galaxy through the broadcast. I know what I am choosing. I am choosing brilliance and kindness and courage. I am choosing someone who will change the galaxy not through conquest, but through innovation. I am choosing Velara, not despite who she is, but because of exactly who she is. He turned back to her, and his voice softened to almost a whisper, but the chamber's acoustics still carried it. Be mine, not because you think you should, not because of politics or treaties, but because I love you, and I think maybe you love me too. Will you be mine? Velara's markings were blazing so bright they lit up the entire royal section. Tears were streaming down her face, which was shocking to the Silvathi present. Royalty did not cry in public. Royalty did not show such raw emotion. But Velara was no longer trying to be what royalty should be. She was just herself. I do love you, she said, her voice breaking. And yes, I will be yours. But Jay, I need you to understand something too. She sat straighter in her hover chair, addressing not just him but the entire council. I will not hide anymore. I will not pretend my condition does not exist. I am going to publish my research under my own name. I am going to build adaptive technology and distribute it freely. I am going to find every disabled Silvathi child hidden in shame and show them they are not alone. She looked at her father, at the council, at Tharo. I am going to change our culture, even if it takes my entire life. I need a partner who will support that revolution. Who will stand beside me when it becomes difficult, when people like the general oppose us? Can you be that partner? Jay smiled. Velara, I would not want to be anything else. Tharo snarled. This is madness. You speak of revolution as if it is something to celebrate. The Silvathi way is sacred. You cannot simply... The Silvathi way is changing, Emperor Kothron interrupted, standing at last. His voice was heavy with emotion. My daughter speaks truth. We have hidden our imperfect ones in shame for generations. We have lost brilliant minds to isolation and despair. Perhaps it is time for that to end. He looked at Velara with an expression she had never seen on his face before. It might have been pride. If Velara wishes to lead this change, she has my blessing, and any who oppose her will answer to me. Tharo looked around the chamber, seeing the mood shifting, seeing even some Silvathi delegates nodding in agreement. He had meant to destroy the bonding, but had instead given Velara and Jay a platform to speak their truth to the entire galaxy. This is not over, Tharo growled, and he stormed from the chamber. But in that moment, with Jay's hand in hers and her father's unexpected support behind her, Velara felt stronger than she had in her entire life. Not cured, not fixed, but supported, chosen, loved. And that, she realized, made all the difference. The bonding ceremony was supposed to be a quiet, formal affair. Instead, it became the most watched event in galactic history. Not because of political importance, though the human-Silvathi alliance did matter, but because billions of beings across hundreds of species wanted to see what happened next in this impossible story. The ceremony was held in the grand Hall of Terminus Prime, with representatives from every council species in attendance. Velara wore traditional Silvathi bonding robes, modified to accommodate her hoverchair. Her markings glowed brilliant blue, brighter than anyone could remember seeing them. Jay wore a combination of human and Silvathi formal wear, looking uncomfortable but determined that the ceremony itself was beautiful and strange, mixing traditions from both cultures. They exchanged vows in both languages. They shared the ritual cup. They joined hands while their families blessed them. When it was done, they were bonded in the eyes of both their peoples. But the real revolution started after the ceremony. Velara published her quantum navigation research under her own name, crediting herself as Princess Velara of Silveth, disabled mathematician. The paper was immediately controversial. Some praised it. Others called it publicity-seeking. But the mathematics was sound, and within weeks, 3 major shipbuilding companies were contacting her about implementation. She used the first payments from licensing her research to establish the Velara Foundation. Its stated mission was simple: to support disabled individuals across all species, to develop adaptive technology, and to change cultural attitudes about disability. Jay helped her set it up, handling the bureaucratic details while she focused on the technical work. Dr. Minho relocated to Terminus Prime to head the Foundation's medical research division. He brought a team of human doctors and therapists who began working with Velara and other disabled individuals from various species. The waiting list grew almost immediately. The response from the Silvathi population was mixed. Some noble families quietly contacted the Foundation about children they had hidden away. Others, led by General Tharo, publicly condemned it as an attack on traditional values. There were protests. There were threats. Security around Velara and Jay had to be increased, but there were also breakthroughs. A young Silvathi named Kira, born deaf, came to the Foundation. Human technology gave her cochlear implants that allowed her to hear for the first time. She cried when she heard her mother's voice. The video went viral across the galaxy. An elderly Silvathi warrior named Bex, who had lost his legs in battle and been forced into shameful retirement, received adaptive prosthetics designed by Velara's team. He walked again, then ran, then returned to teaching combat techniques to young warriors. He became the Foundation's most vocal supporter. 3 months after the bonding, Jay's sister Hana arrived at Terminus Prime. She had been offered a position as the Foundation's chief accessibility designer. Velara and Hana became close friends almost immediately, bonding over shared experiences and shared goals. "You know what is funny?" Hana said one day as they worked together on a new hover chair design. "On Earth, I spent my whole life fighting to be seen as equal. Here, I am just the human designer. My disability is barely remarkable compared to the variety of bodies I see every day. Velara smiled. Perhaps that is what we all need. To be in places where our differences are just part of the diversity. The Foundation expanded rapidly. Within 6 months, they had offices on 5 different worlds. They employed designers, doctors, therapists, and advocates from dozens of species. The adaptive technologies they developed were used by millions of beings, but General Tharao had not given up. He and his supporters continued to oppose the Foundation, calling it a corruption of Silvathi values. The tension finally erupted during a council session. 6 months after the bonding Datar Ox stood and made a formal accusation. The Foundation was undermining Silvathi culture and should be shut down. He had gathered support from conservative factions across multiple species. The vote was scheduled for the following week. The night before the vote, Velara could not sleep. She sat in the room she now shared with Jay, staring at data projections and trying to find a way to save everything they had built. "You are worrying," Jay said, coming to sit beside her. "Of course I am worrying. If the vote goes against us, the Foundation closes. All those people we are helping, all those children we found, they go back to being hidden and ashamed." Jay took her hand. "Then we fight. We show them what we have accomplished. We bring the people we have helped testify. We make them see." The day of the vote, the council chamber was packed. Tharao presented his case with military precision, arguing that the Foundation promoted weakness and undermined the values that made societies strong. Several species voiced support. Then Velara spoke. She did not give a prepared speech. Instead, she simply told stories. She told about Kira, who could now hear her mother. She told about Bex, who could teach again. She told about a Thorian child with mobility issues who could now play with peers. She told about a Krell artist who had lost her vision, but was creating again with adaptive tools. "General Tharao says we promote weakness," Velara said. "I say we promote life. We promote possibility. We promote the idea that every being, regardless of body, has value and potential. Is that truly weakness? Or is weakness refusing to help those who need it because you are afraid of what that says about you?" Then she did something unexpected. She called witnesses. Not diplomats or officials, but the people the Foundation had helped. One by one, they came forward. Different species, different ages, different stories, but all saying the same thing. The Foundation had given them their lives back. The last witness was a Silvathi child named Tove, barely 10 years old, who had been born without the use of his legs. He stood at the podium, using adaptive braces the Foundation had designed, his markings glowing with nervousness. "Before the Foundation, my family kept me hidden," Tove said in a small voice. "They said I was broken, that I brought them shame. Princess Velara found me and told me I was not broken, just different. Now I go to school. I have friends. I am learning to be an engineer. The Foundation did not make me weak. It made me possible." The chamber was silent. Even Tharao seemed shaken. The vote was called. The Foundation survived, not just survived, but thrived. The council voted to officially recognize it and provide funding support. It was a complete reversal from what Tharao had planned. After the vote, Emperor Kothron approached Velara privately. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I spent your whole life trying to hide you, to fix you, to make you something you were not. I thought I was protecting you. I was only hurting you." Velara's markings flickered. "You did what you thought was right. I was wrong. And you, daughter, you are changing not just Sylvith, but the entire galaxy. I am proud of you." I should have said that years ago. It was the first time her father had ever said those words. Velara found herself crying, and for once She did not care who saw. 5 years passed. The Foundation became a permanent galactic institution. The Galactic Council passed the Valara Accords, the first universal disability rights legislation. It required all member species to provide basic accessibility and prohibited discrimination based on physical differences. Not every species adopted it immediately. Not every culture changed overnight. But it was a start, a foundation on which more change could be built. Valara became the Council's special envoy for adaptive integration, a newly created position. She traveled to different worlds, spoke at conferences, consulted on policy. Her quantum navigation research had been implemented by major shipping companies, cutting travel time by 38%. She was one of the most influential people in the galaxy, but she was happiest in quiet moments with Jay. They had a daughter now, named Sora, who was 3 years old and already showing signs of having inherited her mother's mathematical mind. Sora was born without any genetic conditions, but she grew up around the Foundation and thought nothing of seeing people with different bodies and different abilities. Mama's chair goes fast, Sora liked to say, laughing as Valara's improved hoverchair raced through their home. Jay had retired from official diplomatic work to focus on raising Sora and supporting Valara's efforts. He occasionally taught courses on human culture and medical techniques. He seemed happy, truly happy, in a way that made Valara grateful every single day. Her condition had progressed, as predicted, but slower than expected. Dr. Minho's treatments had bought her decades instead of years. She had less use of her arms now, but adaptive technology compensated well. She could still work, still live, still be exactly who she was meant to be. One evening, as they sat watching the stars through their quarters viewport, Sora asleep between them, Jay turned to Valara. "Do you remember when we first met? When I asked you why you did not just do what you were good at?" Valara smiled. "I thought you were naive. I thought you did not understand how the galaxy worked." "Did I?" "No, but you understood something more important. You understood that the galaxy could change, that people could change it, that I could change it." Jay kissed her forehead gently. "You changed yourself. I just loved you while you did it." "That was enough," Valara said. "That was everything." Below them, Terminus Prime glowed with the lights of thousands of species, living and working together. And in the Foundation offices, the communication systems pinged with new requests for help, new families reaching out, new lives beginning to change. The revolution of two had become a revolution of millions. And it had started with a simple question, asked by a human who saw a lonely princess and decided to speak to her. Sometimes, Valara thought, that is all it takes. One person willing to see you. One person willing to choose you. One person willing to whisper, "Be mine," and mean it with their whole heart. Everything else, all the change and progress and hope, grows from that single moment of connection. And she had been so lucky, so impossibly lucky, to have found Jay in a galaxy of billions. The human who looked at her and saw not what was broken, but what was beautiful. The man who taught her that she had always been enough, exactly as she was. Their daughter stirred between them, murmuring something about mathematics in her sleep. Jay laughed softly. Valara's markings glowed bright blue in the darkness. Outside, the galaxy kept turning. And somewhere out there, another lonely person was about to find their impossible connection, their chosen partner, their revolution of two. Because that is what happens when you lead with love instead of fear, with acceptance instead of judgment, with possibility instead of limitation. The galaxy changes. One whispered, "Be mine," at a time.